All right, so here we go. Finally get to build this motor. Twin turbo 408 stroker motor. Started with a 6-liter and bored it out. And now we're getting ready to build it. So I just had it all Cerakoted. So see, everything's all nice and black. It's a custom blend of John Black. Heads, pan, obviously the engine. Just back here, all nicely Cerakoted. So Cerakoting is just a real super durable coating on there, and I'm so excited. This has been a long project trying to get this thing going. So everything is cleaned up. Actually went in and kind of deburred the motor. That's an old racer's trick to like smooth out all the corners, all the edges, and the entire engine. Just went in there with a die grinder and knocked all the corners down, cleaned up the flashing down here, kind of hard to see, but cleaned up all this area down here for oil return, made all that nice, and that's it. Tapped the holes, and now I'm pretty much ready to go. I'm going to start with the camshaft. It goes down in there. It's all new cam bearings. And that's the camshaft right there. Actually an LS9 cam, so not too crazy, but it works. So yeah, I'll set the camera up and do a little time lapse, I guess. I've never done that, so we'll see how it turns out. All right, so I always say that, don't I? All right, so what you're supposed to say. So camshaft first. Get some assembly lube on here, and you can do the camshaft later on. It doesn't matter. But I like to do it first because I can get my hands in there. Guide it in. Just want to be nice and careful going in there, that you don't nick the bearings. Brand spanking new bearings. You don't want these sharp cam lobes beating up on your bearings. So nice ooey gooey assembly lube. And oh yeah, fits like butter. Not margarine, but butter. It's always a good sign when that goes in. They do have bearings that can be a little tight. Shout out to my buddy Chris over at 5-Star Engine, getting me all this stuff and preparing the bearings for me. All right, well, that was it. I'm all done. Not really. Next thing we do is slap the main bearings in there, and then put the crank in. Okay, next step is to get the crankshaft in. I've actually already had this thing mocked up, checked my clearances and everything's good, so I'm going to do the final assembly here on the crank. A little more assembly lube on there. So excited to get this thing going. It's been forever. Some people use oil on this. You're supposed to get your oil pressure up before you even start it, so if you have oil as an assembly lube, that actually works pretty good. This is actual assembly lube, is a little bit thicker though, so I kind of like it better. It's a little added protection when you spin the motor over for the first time. Alright. Oh yeah, she is a heavy one. Nice and easy. Look. Hey, it fits. Imagine that. Okay, so when you put your caps on, obviously you want to make sure that everything's going the right way. See the little points on here? For caps 1 through 4, the points all go towards the back of the motor. It's that way. And then the last one goes forward. The first cap and the 5th cap are both the same. The second cap and the 4th cap are the same, and then the center cap, which is the thrust, it's all by itself. So it goes on there. You got to make sure that so there's actually 2 notches on here because of these caps can go on either way. So the little locking tabs right here, those have to line up. So the cap goes on this way, tab would be on this side. So just got to make sure you get all that right. In my country, we say muy importante to get this stuff together right, because when you're dealing with an engine, you don't want to have to do it again. That would be bad, especially one with 1,000 horsepower. When your buddy is an ex-football player for ASU, that's really bad if you mess up his motor. You know what I'm saying? Although he's a gentle giant, he wouldn't hurt me too bad. I would hope so. Alright, that goes there, this goes there. So I'll get all these caps set in there and then get them torqued down, and we'll be right back. Okay, crankshaft's laid in there. Assembly lube's on, bearings are on, caps are on. Got my ARP studs in there. They recommend 55 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do this in multiple steps. We'll start off at, what do you want to start off at? About 35-ish. Okay, so start in the middle. Work your way out. I always do a spiral. Start in the middle and then just spiral my way out. Do it every time, same way, every motor, and you just won't get in trouble that way. Do it the same way every time. You forget to torque one of these, that's bad. So this is a 6-bolt main, 4 bolts in the top, and then bolts out here on the outside. So we start with the middle set, and we go to the outside set. We're going to do this in 3 passes. Okay, so the first one is 35. Now we're going to go 45. Same deal, start in the inside, spiral out. This is riveting, isn't it? Now where do I go? Here. You gotta concentrate. And this one and that one. Okay. Now final pass 55. Same thing. Click. I did put some anti-seize on these bolts. ARP has their own special lube that goes on there. Anti-friction so that it torques properly, but I don't know. I think this nickel stuff, okay, so we gotta put the side bolts in here, and these will leak a little bit, so we gotta put some sealer on there. You can use silicone, but kind of prefer just putting some pipe dope on there, thread sealer, and I don't know, seems to work pretty good. And then these ones all get torqued down, obviously. So we even Cerakoted the bolts. Hopefully that kind of holds up. Kind of holds up? I definitely want it to hold up. So the next step after this is getting all the pistons put in. But before I do that, I have to set my ring gap. So the ring gap is how tight the rings come together in the cylinder bore. You set that up differently for different motors. So if you're naturally aspirated, you can have a little bit tighter gap. If you have boost, aka nitrous, or turbo, or blower, you want a little bit bigger gap because cylinder pressures are going to be higher, a little bit more heat, a little bit more expansion. You definitely don't want those rings touching, so you have to maintain a little bit of a gap. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's get set at 18. Most 8mm bolts are all about the same. Wow, that's a pretty good spin. That's like 18 right there. Oh, no, it was on 18. Wow. You know, almost all bolts kind of torque the same way. Just a standard bolt. 18mm is going to be, 8mm is going to be about 18 foot-pounds. If you have ARPs though, those are special bolts that can take a lot more torque. And you can tighten those up a lot more as per their spec. These are just standard GM bolts, so we don't have to go crazy. All right. Crankshaft is in. That was easy. And then I'll get the gear on here and we'll set up the cam, sprocket and chain, and then I can start working on the cylinders. So that's next. Okay, so let's talk ring gap. So we have different rings, top ring, middle ring, bottom ring. Top rings are these black ones. And if you look at the instructions, it says that it wants 5/1000ths of an inch of gap per inch of bore. So it's a 4-inch bore. 4 times 0.005 is 20 thousandths. So it's very simple. You stick the ring in there. And these are kind of sharp, so you got to be careful not to cut yourself. And then take one of the pistons you have a piston squaring tool, it works better, but just take a piston and you kind of stick it in there. And then you take your feeler gauge. Oh, I can already tell there's hardly any gap at all on this one. Yeah, it's pretty much closed. Yeah, I can't even get a, what's that, 4 thousandths? I can't even get a 4 thousandths in there. So they're definitely all gonna have to be filed. And that's just a super time consuming process. Do all the tops, all the middles, all the oil rings, and you just very carefully file those, open that gap up. So you should have instructions. You buy your piston kit. The instructions are right here. So it says for high performance, or I'm sorry, right here, street moderate, turbo or nitrous. So 5 thousandths times bore. That's how you figure it out. So that's really critical that this is done right. It's very time consuming, like I said. So this is where I'll be camped out for a while. I'm not going to show it because it just takes forever. You just have to file each one by hand, a little bit at a time, and don't go too far. Piece of cake, right? I'm going to get all these set up and then I'll come back. Alright, so now I'm putting the pistons in. I already got a couple of them put in. Just want to make sure that they were going in okay. You can see this is a dish piston because of the turbo. We want a little bit lower compression. Got the valve reliefs on there, and then it says front right here. So when you put these together, obviously you got to make sure that they're going in correctly. Front goes forward, and then see this chamfer right here? Got a big chamfer on this side, smaller chamfer on this side. So this chamfer will go against the crankshaft forward, and then on the other side, turn it around, and the piston would actually be on the rod the other way around. So, gotta make sure all that goes together correctly. Gotta make sure that the gaps are all lined up where they're supposed to be. So, for example, second ring gap is here. Top ring gap is over here. We're gonna line it up with the piston pin. Make sure that those are spread apart. So this is number 3 piston. I already got 1 and 2 in. Spins, everything looks good so far. So we'll get this one lubed up and installed. Oi. Oi. Come on. Large ARP 7/16 bolts. On these Eagle H-beam rods. Very nice. And these suckers are tight. Yeah, very nice stuff. H-beam rods instead of the I-beam, bigger bolts. This will be able to hold all that horsepower we're going to put at it. How much horsepower do you say? Oh, about 1,000 horsepower. Give or take 5. That's what we're estimating. I think it's a good estimate. Oh boy. Yep, got a little ring problem here. And these are so critical that pay attention to this stuff, and A little oil ring had popped out. That'd be bad. Okay. Now we're good. Spray a little WD on her. These ring compressors, you can see the clamp is on the bottom. Very important that goes down. I mean, it'll fit upside down, but that's not the way it goes. Okay, give it a little squeeze. Make sure everything's straight. You can kind of see if the rings are going in there or not, which they are. Forward is going forward. A little tap. Boing. Just like that. Mm-hmm. One other thing you may want to do. You want to put the rod bearing on. Sometimes I find it easier to do that first. Oh boy. Not the end of the world. This will just pop in there. Plenty of room. Our friend the assembly lube. There we go. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when we were putting the main caps on, the tabs, locking tabs, those go opposite on the main caps. Well, on these caps, you line them up on the same side. So the tabs on the rod line up with the tabs on the cap. No numbers on this side, and oh, no numbers on there either. It's usually numbers on one side, not on the other. That way you know which way it's going on, but as long as you get the tabs lined up in oil. It's just kind of weird how engineers put things together. No consistency there. I would put tabs on the same side on all of it so you remember it and get used to it. Does that make sense? Certainly. That makes sense. Makes dollars. Load them down nice and even because there's little dowel pins in there and they got to go perfectly straight. Okay, so there's another one. Give it a spin. Still nice and easy, so looking good. Move on to the next one. So once again, just a bunch of the same old stuff. Just stab them in there and make sure everything's lined up, tighten them up, and then I'll go back and torque everything once everything is in and I know that it's spinning freely. So I'll come back to that when I'm ready. All right, so next up, got all the pistons in. Everything's torqued. Big old honking 7/16 bolts are tight. But it spins over. Happy with that. And all my, hold on. It's hard to do with one hand. All my fronts are going frontward. Ooh, shiny. You see that? Little front right there. Anyway, all the fronts are going frontward. And the valve reliefs, the little eyebrows are all on top where they're supposed to be. So yeah, thing's about ready to drop in. So that's it for tonight. That was an all-day deal. Got my cam timing on there, or my cam chain oil pump. So bottom end's pretty much done. And I think I'll put the oil pan, stuff like that, and then goes up in there. So I'm excited. So I'll let you know how the next part goes.